Hey everyone, predict the ending. A. Revenge. B. Reconciliation. C. Unexpected twist. Pick ABC and explain. Stories coming up next. I was elbow deep in a busted wall heater, hands scraped up and reeking of burnt dust, when I heard the room behind me go dead quiet. It was a Tuesday. Rec Center lounge. A bunch of retirees drinking lukewarm coffee and watching the news on that old box TV mounted in the corner. Same routine every morning. I was supposed to be fixing the heat before bingo started. Then something on the screen made them all shut up at once. I didn't think anything of it at first. Just figured a politician died or gas prices jumped again. Then I heard a chair screech, followed by one of the old guys shouting, "That's her! That's the Harrington girl!" I froze, back still turned, fingers curled around a screwdriver. My neck got hot. I stood up slow, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked into the lounge. On screen, a rescue team was dragging people out from under a collapsed service tunnel near Lake Superior. News banner crawling across the bottom. Breaking, emergency crews extract survivors after tunnel collapse. Then the camera zoomed in. Helmet off, face cut and smeared with soot. Eyes wide and locked on something just off camera. It was me. Quick note before we go further. Share which city or country you're watching from. I didn't even remember the cameras being there. Just remembered hauling that kid out, his chest barely moving, my arms jelly from holding the line for too long. But now here I was, beamed into every home in town. The room stayed silent except for the TV. You could hear the reporters saying my name like it was a headline. First responder, Harper Harrington, led the charge into the collapsed corridor. And all those old-timers turned at once, like they were watching the same rerun they'd seen 100 times. Only this time, it wasn't the TV they were staring at. It was my dad, Mark Harrington, sitting at the back corner table, same as always, with a beer even though it was barely 10. He was grinning when I walked in earlier. Now that grin was gone. His eyes locked on the screen, face pale, lips tight. The bottle in his hand didn't move. Pete Benson leaned forward, that gravel voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Well, I'll be damned. You see that, Mark? That's your girl right there." Dad didn't say a word, just sat there, blinking slow, jaw working like he wanted to chew something but forgot how. I didn't speak, didn't need to. Every person in that room was already playing back every dumbass thing he'd ever said about me, about how girls didn't belong in gear, about how I'd wash out like a weak trainee the second things got real. And now I was on TV, covered in ash, pulling someone's kid out of a death trap. He sat there, still as stone, beer in hand, nothing to say. I turned around and walked out the door. I didn't stop walking until I hit the alley behind the rec center. The cold wind came in off the lake, sharp as glass. Felt good on my face. Better than sitting in that room full of stares and silence. That was the thing about our town. Silence always said more than words. I grew up in Iron Hill, northern Michigan. Pop just under 10,000 give or take who moved out or OD'd that year. You'd drive through and see old brick factories with busted windows, papered over shops, rusty pickup trucks parked outside the same 3 bars. Church bells rang on Sundays, but most folks were drunk by dinner. My dad, Mark Harrington, worked the line at North Iron Parts for 31 years. Woke up at 4, home by 5, cracked a beer by 5:05. People said he was salt of the earth, a real man. They loved saying that like it meant something. To me, he was a man who only talked when he was mad and only looked proud when someone else was watching. I was the youngest of 3. My brothers, Caleb and Drew, were everything he wanted. Caleb ran dispatch at the sheriff's office, always flashing that badge like it meant power. Drew fixed diesel engines and got greasy for a living. Loud, confident, arms like tree trunks. Dad bragged about them like they were Hall of Famers. Every time we went to a church potluck or fireman's breakfast, he'd slap their backs and laugh too loud. And then he'd look at me. "She's the weird one," he'd say, nodding my way. Didn't want a Barbie, wanted a socket wrench. He thought it was funny, so did everyone else. Before we go on, tell us where you're watching from today. I used to sneak into Drew's garage when he wasn't around just to study how engines worked. Took apart a carburetor at 12. Dad found it on the kitchen table and lost his mind. Threw it in the trash and said I'd ruined a perfectly good weekend. "You're not a damn mechanic," he growled. "Girls don't crawl under trucks. You want oil in your hair? Go be a waitress at a Jiffy Lube." He didn't mean it as a joke. With him, things like that were gospel. In school, I wasn't a straight A student, but I paid attention. Teachers said I had potential, which didn't mean anything at home. Dad didn't give a damn about grades. He cared if your hands were calloused and your boots dirty by sunset. Caleb and Drew passed that test. I didn't. At home, I stayed quiet. Figured if I didn't speak, I couldn't say the wrong thing. Dinner was the same every night. Meat, starch, beer, silence. Once in a while, Dad would grunt a question at the boys. Never asked me about my day, never asked what I was reading, even though Mom kept bringing home library books like it would change something. Mom tried, she really did. She'd slip me lemon drops when no one was looking. Bought me a tool set for Christmas once. Hid it under my bed so Dad wouldn't see it. I used it until the handles cracked. She believed in me, but quietly. Always quietly. I remember one summer, the county held a car show on Main Street. Drew had a rebuilt '78 Bronco he was showing off. Dad dragged me along, acting like it was some family outing. Whole day, he stood next to the truck like he'd built it himself. Folks came by and clapped him on the back. I was off to the side, staring at the fire rescue rig parked by the food tents. A couple guys from Marquette's response team were doing a demo. Ropes, gear, the whole thing. I stood there for over an hour watching them work. Something about the way they moved, the precision of it, the focus, that stuck with me. Later, when I mentioned it at dinner, Dad barely looked up. "Climbing around in other people's messes," he said. "Ain't a real job. You'll grow out of it." I didn't answer, just chewed my food and stared at the wall. But I didn't grow out of it. I grew around it, through it. Scene ends with an action. That night, I dug my old tool set out from under the bed, tightened every bolt in it, and started planning how to get out of that house. Next morning before school, I showed up at the town firehouse and asked for a cadet application. I still had grease under my fingernails from working with my brother's busted lawnmower. Didn't care. Captain Rizzo looked me over like he expected me to back out before the ink dried. I didn't. I signed the form, took the packet, and showed up for drills that weekend. That was junior year. I was 16 and pissed off enough to run through walls. The first day, the guys snickered when I tried lifting the high-rise pack, 40 pounds of dead weight across my shoulder, and I damn near fell over. Didn't matter. I did it again. And again. One of them, Scott Dobbs, asked if I was doing it for attention or extra credit. I told him to eat shit and timed him on the ladder crawl. I beat him by 8 seconds. Word got around school quick. "Harrington girls trying to be a fireman," they'd say, like it was a joke. Like I was a little girl stomping around in her dad's boots. Dad got wind of it at the bar. He came home that night, leaned in the doorway of the kitchen while I scrubbed out a stain on my jacket and said, "You playing hero now? You'll burn out before you figure out which end of the hose to hold. Before we keep going, drop a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from." I didn't answer, just kept scrubbing. Weekends were for drills. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I ran hills with an old air tank on my back. I'd come home soaked in sweat, pants covered in mud, hands blistered raw. Dad would glance up from his recliner long enough to mutter, "You bleeding yet?" Then he'd crack another beer and turn the volume up, but I stuck with it. I was the only girl in the program. Didn't mean I wanted to be one of the guys. Just meant I could do the same damn work. Some of them came around, started calling me by name instead of princess. Others just kept their mouths shut. I remember this one Saturday morning. It was barely light out and freezing cold. We were doing ladder races, 2-man teams, 30 feet up, full gear. I paired with a guy named Lenny, big dude, quiet but fast. We crushed it. Beat the captain's stopwatch by 3 full seconds. When I climbed down, Rizzo slapped my shoulder and said, "Didn't think you had that in you." "Neither did anyone else," I said, loud enough for the rest to hear. Senior year, I started talking to crews from up north. One of them, a guy from Duluth, told me about a regional rescue unit that worked extreme weather calls. Floods, backwoods rescues, collapsed structures. They needed tough people, real stamina, zero whining. Sounded like everything I wanted and nothing my dad would ever understand. When I told him I was applying, he scoffed. Didn't even look up from his crossword. "You don't have the spine," he said. "First time someone bleeds in your lap, you'll be crying for your mama." I stood there in the kitchen for a second, took a breath, thought about throwing the milk jug at his head. Instead, I turned around, went to my room, and finished packing my duffel. I left 2 days later, didn't wait for a ride or a goodbye, wrote 5 words on the back of an old grocery list, taped it to the fridge, "Gone to train. Don't wait." I took my turnout gear, my books, and the 58 bucks I had in savings, and I walked to the Greyhound stop. Didn't look back. The Greyhound dropped me off in Duluth just before dawn. It was March, but the snow hadn't quit yet. Wind came off the lake like it had a grudge. I'd stuffed my duffel with thermals, work gloves, and a second-hand fleece. None of it mattered. First morning at the compound, we stood in a gravel lot with frost clinging to our eyebrows. Captain Brandt, the training lead, barked out instructions while we jogged in place just to keep blood moving. They called it Hell Month, and they weren't kidding. First few days, I couldn't even lift the hydraulic cutter without it swinging me sideways. My shoulders burned like fire. Boots rubbed blisters on both heels. We ran firehouse stairs till our legs gave out, hosed live flames in zero wind chill, climbed out of fake mine shafts half blind from smoke. Sleep came in 3-hour shifts, usually soaked. Always cold. I thought about quitting. I really did. But every time I hit a wall, I heard my dad's voice in my head. You'll burn out. You don't have the spine. You'll be crying for your mama. So I pushed harder. Quick pause here. Tell us where you're listening from today. I started waking up early, did pull-ups on the engine bay racks, practiced mass drills alone in the locker room. The others noticed. A guy named Louis started calling me Iron Lung, said I held my breath longer than half the team. It wasn't a compliment, not at first, but over time, it turned into respect. Some guys dropped out by the end of week 2. Heat exhaustion, injury, or just couldn't handle the pressure. The rest of us dug in. We did simulated rescues in dark tunnels rigged with smoke and rubble. No light, no sound except the screech of your own breath through the SCBA. Crawling on hands and knees, dragging a 200-pound dummy like your life depended on it. Sometimes I'd gag from the smoke and bile in my throat, but I never stopped. Every time I finished a drill, I'd log it in my notebook and write, 1 more rep, 1 less excuse. They didn't give out praise. Brant would nod once if you did something right. That was it. But after week 4, he called out names for the advanced quals list, and mine was on it. Tunnel response unit, he said. Hard work, high stakes. Not for showboats or weak links. Damn right it wasn't. I passed my final burn test, hiked 3 miles in gear, and crawled 50 yards through a collapsed pipe maze in 12 minutes flat. They handed me my assignment letter at the end of week 6. Regional Rescue, Tunnel Ops Division. I took the envelope, stared at it for a second, then walked to the break room, bought a 50-cent postcard from the vending machine, and wrote, Made the team. Tunnel response. Doing it for real. Addressed it to Mom's name. Didn't bother writing Dad's. Dropped it in the outgoing mail bin and went back to gear cleanup. No call came, no visit, nothing in return. But I didn't need it. That silence? I was used to it by then. Knew how to work through it. Scene ends with an action. That night, I sharpened my rescue blade, packed my field kit, and zipped my name tag onto my jacket like I'd always belonged. I rode into Iron Hill on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, still wearing my gear jacket. Didn't even think about it. It was warm, broken in, and had my patch stitched over the chest. Tunnel Response Unit, Northern Region. Soon as I stepped into the diner for a coffee, heads turned. Old Man Thorne stared like I had 2 heads. Sandy from the bakery gave me a polite little smile, then looked straight down at her register. Even the high school cashier barely made eye contact when she rang me up, like I'd walked in wearing a clown suit. This town didn't know what to do with someone like me. I parked out front of the house around 4. Same sagging porch, same paint-chipped siding. Dad's truck sat crooked in the driveway like always. I knocked even though I still had a key. Mom opened the door, pulled me into a hug, and held on longer than she used to. She whispered, He's been drinking since noon, before stepping back. The house smelled like turkey and hot beer. In the living room, Dad sat in his recliner like a king who hadn't ruled in years. TV blaring, beer in hand, socks half off. He looked at me, then at my jacket, then took a long pull from his bottle. Well, look who's back from saving the world, he said. Quick note, before we keep going, tell us where you're watching from today. I didn't answer, just set my bag down and went to help Mom in the kitchen. She'd done everything herself. Drew and Caleb hadn't lifted a damn finger. Same old setup. They were already on their second round of beers by the time we sat down to eat. Dinner was tense, but quiet. For a while. Then we ended up at the tavern. I didn't even want to go, but Mom nudged me, said it'd be good to see people. She always believed in second chances, even when nobody asked for them. We'd barely gotten through the door when Dad raised his beer and barked, This here's my little firefighter Barbie. The guys around him howled. I smiled like I didn't care, like it was just a dumb joke, but it landed hard. Caleb leaned over and said, "So what do they have you do? Hold the victim's hands while the real guys do the dirty work?" Drew added, "Hope you've got a pink helmet to match that coat." I didn't say a word, just stood there, teeth clenched, jaw so tight I thought it might crack. I looked at my dad. He grinned like a man proud of his punchline. I left early. Back at the house, Mom was waiting up. She handed me a slice of pumpkin pie wrapped in foil. Her eyes were soft, but her voice was sharp. "Ignore him, sweetheart. You're doing good. Don't let his small world shrink yours." I nodded, took the pie, and said goodnight. Next morning, I was gone before the sun came up. Didn't wake anyone, didn't write a note. Scene ends with an action. I got in my truck, peeled out of that driveway, and didn't come back for a single holiday after that. I hit the state line before noon and didn't even glance in the rear view. By that night, I was back on shift. Ice storm rolling in, forecast calling for downed lines and jackknife semis. We stocked the trucks, checked air tanks, and laid out tarps in the bay. Felt good to be useful again. Felt better than standing in some smoky tavern getting laughed at by men who'd never saved a damn life. In the years that followed, I kept moving. No big parades, no news crews, just the kind of work where your hands get cracked and your heartbeat lives in your ears. We pulled a teenager out of a creek bed during a spring flood, had to use pulleys and rope anchors on frozen rock. Another time, we airlifted 2 hikers who slipped down a ravine. They were bleeding and shaking, one with a broken femur. I was the one who crawled out first, made sure the line was secure before we hoisted them up. Once, I dropped 50 feet into a grain silo to reach a worker who'd fallen through the top hatch. Grain swallows you if you're not fast. I got there in time. Barely. My crew didn't care where I came from or what I looked like. All they cared about was whether I showed up, stayed sharp, and hauled my weight. And I did. Every damn time. Now's a good time. Tell us which city or country you're watching from. Off shift, I kept to myself. I wrote Mom sometimes. Nothing long, just updates. I never asked about him. Never signed my name with love. Just still here, still working. She'd write back every now and then. Her letters always smelled like lemon balm and dryer sheets. He never called, never wrote, not once. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't expect anything from him. But some nights, after a hard rescue or a back-to-back call-out with no sleep, that silence hit different. One Christmas Eve, the station was dead quiet. Crew played poker in the rec room. I stepped outside to call home. Just figured I'd check in. Mom answered on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, soft and warm, like she was holding a cup of cocoa in both hands. "Hey, just wanted to say hi. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas to you, too." Her voice dipped just a little. "Your brothers are here." I paused. "Is he?" She took a second too long to answer. "He's out." He wasn't. I didn't say anything, just nodded like she could see me, then hung up. The guys were still laughing inside. I stayed out back, fingers freezing, phone still warm in my hand. A few minutes later, a call came in. Frozen pipe burst in the East Station. Basement flooding, walls buckling. We loaded up fast and rolled out. That night, I was up to my knees in ice water, trying to clamp off a cracked valve with numb fingers, shoulders aching, breath fogging my mask. I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel anything. I just kept twisting that wrench like it was the only thing left in the world that made sense. Scene ends with an action. When the pipe finally gave and water sprayed my face, I blinked twice, stood up, and asked for the next damn job. I barely got my gloves off from the pipe job when dispatch radioed in. Structural collapse, tunnel near the lake. Tourist ferry route, mostly used in the summer, but still open for fall tours. Heavy rain the past few days. Clay soil, weak supports, no warning. We hit the road in 6 minutes flat. By the time we reached the scene, the entrance was caved in. Concrete snapped like cheap drywall, mud and steel everywhere. Screams echoing from below. Multiple trapped, incident command told us. 2 confirmed alive, 1 kid, 1 adult, unknown location. They didn't have to tell us what that meant. Find them or bury them. We grabbed gear, helmets, tanks. I tightened the strap under my chin and didn't say a word. Luis handed me the locator. Brant pointed at the northwest quadrant, and we went in. Inside, it was hell. We crawled through standing water, half the ceiling dripping mud. The air reeked of diesel and broken earth. Every few feet, we'd hit a blockage and dig by hand. One guy almost got buried by a secondary slide. We hauled him out and kept going. After about 4 hours, my hand brushed something soft in a pocket of crushed pipe. A leg, small, barely twitching. Got one, I yelled. Kid, conscious but fading. We dug fast. No time for second guesses. I wedged my shoulders through the gap, flashlight clenched between my teeth. His face was streaked with mud, lips pale, eyes open but not blinking. He couldn't have been more than 8. Hey, buddy, I said. I'm gonna get you out of here, okay? Just keep breathing. He didn't answer, but he blinked. That was enough. We cleared space around his chest, careful not to shift the beams. Took 2 of us to brace the roof while I pulled him out inch by inch. Every muscle in my back screamed. My arms shook, couldn't feel my legs under the weight. Dust filled my mouth, made it hard to swallow. But I didn't stop. If you're still watching, drop a comment, let us know what country you're in. One more tug, and he was free. I scooped him up, turned, and saw the tunnel open behind me, full of medics, floodlights, and news cameras. Big damn ones, too. I had no idea they were rolling. I stumbled out of the debris, lungs on fire, kid in my arms, blinking into the light. Someone grabbed him from me. I dropped to one knee and coughed so hard I thought my ribs cracked. They zoomed in on my face, blood on my cheek, soot in my teeth, eyes glassy but locked in. I didn't notice. I just wanted air. Back in Iron Hill, the bar was packed like it always was on a weekend. Same regulars, same flat beer. They had the news on, like usual. Nobody was really watching. Then my face hit the screen, grimy, gasping, hands outstretched with that kid, holding him like he was the last thing that mattered. Pete Benson pointed. That's her. That's the Harrington girl. Everyone turned. Every man who'd called me Barbie. Crazy. The weird one. They stared like they'd just seen a ghost. And in the back corner, my dad sat with his beer halfway to his mouth. He didn't move, didn't blink. He saw me, clear as day, live on the 6 o'clock news. For once in his damn life, he didn't have a joke ready. He didn't say a single word. Didn't even take the sip. Scene ends with an action. He just set the bottle down on the table and stared at the screen like it might shatter. He didn't even finish the beer. Just set it down, stared at the screen, and left. No goodbye, no smart-ass comment. Just stood up and walked out of the bar like the floor had dropped underneath him. Next day, I started hearing things. I wasn't home. I was back on shift, scrubbing blood off a turnout coat that wouldn't come clean. But the text rolled in. A buddy from high school messaged, "Your town's finally shutting up." One of the old fire cadets sent a photo. TV still on in the bar, but the whole place empty, chairs pushed back like folks had left mid-sentence. Word spread fast. That's how it works in towns like Iron Hill. At the gas station, strangers bagged Mom's groceries before she could reach the counter, left extra bills on the counter without saying a word. At the church potluck, a woman who hadn't spoken to her since the funeral for her own brother took both her hands and said, "You must be proud." Mom called me that night, said it had been the weirdest day of her life. "They treated me like I was married to a hero," she said. They looked at me different. I didn't know what to say, so I just let her talk. She deserved it. While we're here, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Later that week, Pete Benson caught Dad at the same bar, same corner seat. He walked up slow, drink in hand, and stood there for a minute just looking at him. "That your shame, Mark?" he asked. "Or you finally figured out what she is?" Dad didn't answer, didn't even pretend to smile. Just slid off the stool, tossed a 20 on the counter, and left. Didn't come back for a week. I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. It made the rounds like everything else in that town. People couldn't wait to tell me. Messages, calls, even a postcard from Lenny, who worked supply downstate now. He finally shut up. World's gone weird. Guys who used to laugh at his Barbie jokes stopped joining his table. They sat across the room instead. Watched him, but never spoke. Not with the same ease, not like before. The silence that used to follow me around, it stuck to him now. He didn't know how to live under it. Mom said he started eating dinner in the garage. Said he'd come in only when the lights were off. She didn't ask why. Didn't need to. Me, I stayed busy. We got called out for another ravine rescue. Middle-aged guy on a solo hike snapped his ankle and rolled 20 feet. I rappelled down, got him stable, lifted him out, then stayed behind to retrieve the gear. By the time I reached the top, the crew was already packed up and watching news clips on someone's phone. "Look," one of them said, turning the screen to me. "That your old man?" It was a grainy shot. caught from someone's phone inside the bar. Dad walking out, face pale, jaw tight, Pete standing behind him. I nodded once and handed the phone back. Didn't need to watch it twice. Scene ends with an action. I walked to the rig, slammed the door shut behind me, and told the driver, "Let's go." I stepped out of the rig and into a line of folding chairs, half the courthouse lawn already packed. Iron Hill hadn't seen a crowd like that in years. The sky was gray but dry, wind sharp enough to sting your cheeks. A row of little flags lined the sidewalk, waving like they gave a damn. A podium stood in front of the old war memorial, cords taped down over the grass, speakers crackling with feedback. I wore full dress blues, pressed shirt, polished boots, badge gleaming over my left chest. Medals I hadn't touched in months clipped neat and level. I hadn't worn the uniform like that since graduation. This time, it actually meant something. I spotted my crew off to the side, standing easy in uniform jackets and station caps. Luis threw me a thumbs up. Brant gave a single nod. The crowd hushed when the mayor stepped up to the mic. "Today," he started, voice stiff with ceremony, "we honor a local resident whose courage in the Duluth Tunnel collapse saved lives and reminded us what real service looks like." He read from a card, words formal and stiff. But when he got to my name, the mic popped a little from how loud he said it. Harper Lee Harrington. And just like that, the whole town heard it. Clear, full volume, no middle name left out. The applause hit like a wave. "Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from today." I scanned the crowd, and there he was. Third row, hat pulled low, arms crossed like he was waiting for someone to fight. He didn't clap, didn't move, but he came. That was new. The mayor handed me the medal in a velvet box. I shook his hand, posed for the camera, then stepped back and let the silence return. They opened the mic for questions. Most folks just smiled, kept it light. Then one local reporter, kid from the high school paper, stood up. "Is your family proud of you?" My throat tightened, but just for a second. I looked straight ahead and answered without blinking. "The people of this state make me proud." Behind me, someone sucked in a breath. A few seats over, a chair creaked. Dad flinched. I saw it from the corner of my eye. Didn't even try to hide it. Afterward, people rushed in, shaking hands, clapping me on the back. Old neighbors who hadn't looked twice at me in school now wanted selfies. One woman cried and hugged me like I was her own kid. A little girl, couldn't have been more than 7, tugged on my sleeve. "Can I take a picture with you?" I knelt down, smiled for the shot. Her mom snapped it with a shaky hand. Before walking off, the girl leaned close and whispered, "I want to be like you." I swallowed hard and squeezed her shoulder. "Then you already are." A few feet away, Dad stood up. He didn't come toward me, didn't say a word. But I watched him turn away from the crowd, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. His hands were empty. No beer, no smirk. Just a man who didn't know what to do with the version of me he couldn't control. Mom caught my eye from the sidelines. She didn't wave, just smiled and mouthed, "I told you so." Scene ends with an action. I tucked the medal under my arm, stepped off the stage, and walked past my father without looking back. I closed the front door behind me and headed straight upstairs. My old room still smelled like dust and dryer sheets. Same chipped dresser, same cracked mirror over the closet. The medal sat right in the center, box open, gold catching the porch light like it was waiting for someone to argue with it. I didn't go see him. Didn't need to. The house stayed quiet all night. No footsteps, no doors creaking. Just the low hum of the fridge and the tick of the hallway clock. In the morning, I left early, walked instead of driving. Let my boots hit pavement slow, steady. The cold didn't bother me. First stop was the corner store. An old woman I didn't recognize stopped mid-step by the bread aisle, touched my sleeve, and said, "Heard what you did? My nephew saw the news. He cried." At the diner, the waitress poured my coffee without asking. "It's on the house," she said, barely meeting my eyes. At the crosswalk, a man I hadn't seen since high school stuck out his hand. "Heard your dad walked out of Jerry's last night, right in the middle of telling some story. Just got up and left." I nodded. "Sounds about right." He shook his head and gave a low whistle. "About damn time. Quick check-in, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from today." I didn't gloat. Didn't need to. I passed the firehouse next. Same peeling trim, same rusted bell. The flag outside snapped in the wind. I stopped, just for a second, and nodded up at it. This place tried to make me small, kept me boxed in, laughed at what I wanted to be. I didn't fight back with fists or raise voices. I did the job, got better, stronger, walked the line, and didn't flinch. That was the win. Not a headline, not a medal, not even the crowd. It was the silence that followed me wherever I went, and the fact that now it followed him. Scene ends with an action. I zipped up my jacket, turned the corner, and walked away from that firehouse for the last time.